The Tartarian Empire was an empire that existed for hundreds upon hundreds of years. It disappeared about 150 years ago, but it left behind its remnants, its beautiful architecture. I read a book by James Lee that taught me a lot about this, and that it's found all over the world. The Tartarian Empire stretched to New Zealand, Australia, North and South America. And how do we know this? Because they left behind their structures. The same hand built all of the similar structures found all over the world. I began to identify them in Newark, New Jersey, and I first saw in Philadelphia there was tremendous Tartarian structures. But this is an example of some of their structures. I know what you're thinking. It's Greco-Roman, it's Victorian. What I'm here to tell you is that most of our history is false, and that this is remnants of a great empire known as Tartary. So let's begin. Newark City Hall, with its 22 carat, 24 carat clad dome. Look at this structure. Look at the Corinthian columns, the grand staircase. Look at that dome. That's called Antiquitech. That was a technology that was dismantled by the survivors of the last reset because they didn't know how it worked. The inside, the marble stairwells, the Corinthian columns. You know, I listen to John Levi a lot, and he talks about how this takes away your breath, that today we build squares. This is in Newark, New Jersey, a few blocks from what would be considered a ghetto. It is absolutely splendid and beautiful. It is a Tartarian structure. And by the way, it has a basement, because there's something I would like to discuss about basements. Basements were primarily shoveled out by hand with spades until 1950. That's right, until 1950. I'm not saying that basements were not built before 1950, but they were extremely labor intensive. That all changed in 1947 with the invention of the backhoe. Because even if you had to shovel out a basement, what were you going to do with all the displaced dirt? Were you going to raise the elevation of the property? The backhoe enabled you to scoop and put it into a dump truck. One more thing I'd like to discuss, and that will be the history of photography. According to the narrative we're given on cameras and their history, they were invented at the beginning of the 19th century, or the beginning of the 1800s. They were mass produced by 1850. By 1880, newspapers in New Jersey began putting photos into newspapers. This is the Essex County Courthouse. Looks like you plucked it right out of the center of Rome. Look at its grandeur. Look at all the statues. And this too, the inside is just breathtaking. I never knew that this structure was so intricate, so elaborate, so beautiful. And would you believe that the narrative on both of these structures is that they were built in the beginning of the 1900s? These structures take away your breath in 2022. I would have thought that in 1902 or 1907, it would have been just off the charts. And yet, we don't have one picture in one newspaper. With the camera handy for over 50 years. They had the Kodak Brownie, came out in 1900. We don't have one picture of the groundbreaking ceremony, of the building or making of the basement, or any of the phases of construction of any of these two beautiful structures. The explanation is quite simple. You can't take a picture of something's construction if you didn't construct it. In the coming weeks, I plan on covering more of the beautiful structures that are found all around New Jersey. I decided to start with Newark. This is the Basilica. This is unbelievable. I hope you'll join me. I welcome comments. I won't be too open to people just being ignorant and making ridiculous, insulting comments, but it is an area for discussion. And it's something that is a big question mark. I realize now why so much effort is put into entertainment and sports. Because if you just begin to scratch the surface a little bit, it all unravels.